2022, superhero movies are everywhere. Everybody who hasn't been living under a rock today has seen at least one of the many, many Marvel movies. It's a foregone conclusion. And if you talk about Marvel movies before the cinematic universe, the Disneyverse, right? People will look at X-Men, or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, or Batfleck's Daredevil, or Nick Cage's multiple Ghost Riders, plural. But before all of that, there were still a few live-action Marvel characters kicking around, if you can believe it.
I have to understand something before I can believe it.
Well, that's exactly what we're here for. Today, I'm going to try my best to construct a Marvel Cinematic Universe of Avengers Marvel movies, and all before Blade came out.
Any questions?
Why is Blade the Rubicon, the line in the sand that we're not going to cross?
You have to stop someplace.
Have you seen superhero movies before Blade? I mean, seriously, there are comic book movies before and after Blade. The first two Blade movies have arguably aged better than most of the rest of the pre-Disney Marvels. Fantastic Four, Elektra, the goofy Punisher with Travolta. The digital stuntmen that were just becoming viable in the Matrix movies were being fiddled with in Blade 2 for fight scenes, and the CGI for getting the Reaper's faces to open was finally accessible for movies like this to extend the reality in the kinds of ways that we just take for granted in today's action movies, and Marvel or otherwise. This set a new standard of what we could achieve with this technology. Blade looks like a modern superhero movie in a way that is just undeniable, especially when in contrast with the movies that we're about to look at. Now, the Marvel Cinematic U proper starts off with Iron Man, and I admit we did not have an Iron Man back in the day. The closest we got was RoboCop, and he didn't really have the mobility that you'd like to see in an Iron Man. So, no Iron Man. But, technically, Incredible Hulk came out before Iron Man, and we do have a couple Hulk movies that we can talk about. Now, The Incredible Hulk was a TV series that ran for 5 seasons in the 70s, and then took about 10 years off before coming back with a trinity of made-for-TV movies. The Incredible Hulk Returns came out in 1988. It got a theatrical release in Japan and in the UK in 1990. So I'm not cheating yet.
These are confusing times.
And it gave us this really goofy-ass Thor.
First things first.
What are you doing?
Thirsty.
What are you doing?
I'm thirsty.
Don't let him touch the channel! Stop him! He'll wreck everything! Go on, make him stop!
You maniac, hold it for a second!
Drink. Is there nothing to drink in this alchemist's den?
But it's also the first crossover with another Marvel character and the Hulk. That wouldn't happen again until Avengers in 2012, meaning Hulk was 24 years ahead of its time.
What? I see this as an absolute win.
Then Trial of the Incredible Hulk in 1989 gave us Daredevil and a bearded and ponytailed Kingpin played by John Rhys Davies. And that's pretty good. I mean, even though he's got an English accent, he's got the beard, it could have been way worse. I mean, at least he commands a room.
Edgar, I want you to bring in more hawks to keep the pigeons off the roof.
And we get Daredevil as a guest star.
My name is Matt Murdock. I'm an attorney.
And this is a pretty good Daredevil as well. I mean, some might gripe about him not having the little horns or the red costume and everything, but this feels very year one to me. Maybe it's an unintended homage to Man Without Fear.
Nobody. How am I supposed to... This knife hurts my ears.
And it also filmed in Vancouver, which becomes especially obvious 13 minutes in when they're at a SkyTrain station. This also features Stan Lee's first ever cameo as a juror in the trial of the Incredible Hulk, and this becomes standard in the cinematic universe decades later. But once again, Bixby was decades ahead of everybody else. Now, there's also a third movie, The Death of the Incredible Hulk, as the Daredevil feature in Trial of the Incredible Hulk was meant to be a backdoor pilot for a Daredevil TV series that never materialized. Similarly, Death of the Incredible Hulk was meant to be a relaunching point for the TV series. But ratings had fallen off, and even though there was some talk of a fourth movie, Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, Bixby passed away 3 years later, making that impossible. This final entry was also filmed in
Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
And while it doesn't feature any other Marvel characters, it does feature Andreas Katsoulis of Babylon 5 fame and Elizabeth Grayson of Highlander notoriety. So Ferrigno and Bixby gave us an entire trilogy of Hulk movies. While in the Disneyverse we've waited so long through 2 different Hulk movies to finally get the right Hulk, and then he doesn't even get his own movie.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, so we got a Hulk, a Thor, a Daredevil. It's a pretty good start. So how about a Cap? We got a couple different options here as well. All of them are bad.
I don't know why everyone believes that, but that isn't true.
The Incredible TV series in the 70s was part of a slew of Marvel projects pitched for television, and one of them was Captain America in 1979.
Captain America.
Yeah, Captain America.
Captain America?
Why are we doing this?
If I'm going to be Captain America, I want to be the same Captain America my father was, in every way.
But your dad wasn't Captain America. Sorry, right. So they did make some changes from the comic. Rather than diving into a production with a full run of episodes, Cap got 2 made-for-TV movies in 1 year. I think the second one is a bit more fun, and it's got Christopher Lee in it as the villain. Part 1 was released theatrically in Colombia, and Part 2 was released theatrically in France. In Part 1, we meet the 70s version of Slacker Cap, who's living in a van and drawing pretty pictures for folks.
Hey, Steve-O. How you doing, buddy?
Real good, man. Real good.
Yeah, where you been? I figured you got out of the Marines 2 weeks ago.
Well, I've been coming down the coast slow and easy, kicking back.
Pretty mellow set of wheels.
Yeah. It's going to be my home on the road for the next few years.
All right.
So that's cute. But the entire movie takes way too long to get going. They change some stuff about his origins, since World War II has little to nothing to do with him now. Instead, it's about his father's experimental steroid that enhances his strength and agility.
It's not just strength and agility, it's vision and hearing.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of emphasis on his having a motorcycle that's rocket launched out of the back of his van for some reason. I mean, he doesn't even get his costume until the last 20 minutes, and it's a pretty underwhelming reveal. Actually, we don't even see the proper uniform until the literal end shot. Now, Captain America 2, Death Too Soon in 1979 is better because it's more silly and fun, and, I mean, the shield throws alone. Or classic one-liners like,
The old people around here are my friends.
or intricate and well-reasoned choreography. Or fight scenes that, quite frankly, make no sense at all. Like, here, I believe he just needs to go up to the machine and pull the guy out of the crane, but instead he, like, climbs up a thing and then comes over and comes down and gets it. Like, it's ridiculous. What about this maneuver with the bike? Okay, well, as corny as those 2 movies are, we do have another option, a third option, which came out in 1990, and it shouldn't be nearly as cheesy. Oh. Crap.
For the rest of the world, he's just codenamed Captain America. He may not be Superman, but he'll be a living symbol of what this country stands for.
Who wrote this? At least they tried to attempt a World War II origin. Even if the Red Skull's Italian, for some reason. Sometimes he looks like this, and then other times he looks like that. But Ronnie Cox plays a really great President Bernie Sanders, which is fun.
We're going to have to find millions of new jobs for the people who make disposable plastics, toxins, household pesticides. It's bad medicine. And nobody said the medicine's going to taste any good. But can we afford not to take it?
And they did improve the shield throw. Okay, so we got Cap to lead the team, or go surfing and paint pictures for old people, depending on your choice.
Look, we got a good start. Where do we go from here?
In 1977, there was another TV series that came out at the same time as The Incredible Hulk. Spider-Man.
Oh, well, this will only take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there was only 13 episodes, and it was canceled in season 2, but the 90-minute pilot was released theatrically internationally in over a dozen countries, including France, and Germany, and Spain, and Mexico.
I'm going to allow it.
There were also rumors that Bill Bixby was planning a Hulk Spider-Man TV movie crossover that never materialized, but it would have connected another piece of their made-for-TV universe for us. The thing about this TV series is it's just bad, honestly. I mean, remember that thing I said before about at the start of CGI bringing these characters to life in a way that we just can't do practically? Well, this is Spider-Man before computers. We should probably just move on now.
I'll come back anytime.
If we had gotten the Spider-Man Hulk crossover that would have connected Hulk, Thor, Daredevil, and Spider-Man, then Doctor Strange could be the final piece of that production, another of a set, really. Most people know about the Hulk TV show, and some know or have heard of the Spider-Man show or the Cap movies, but Doctor Strange is most forgotten and neglected. It's just pretty flat and dull. I mean, it feels like a failed American reboot of Doctor Who in the 70s. There are some cool bits, though. Morgana is the villain, right? And she's played by Jessica Walter, who's Archer's mom. And the Nameless One is featured in it as well. Wong is played by Clyde Kutsatsu. And if you don't recognize his face, you just need to go check Wikipedia and have your mind blown. And Strange is a great doctor.
Your ulcers will go away if you lay off the juice.
I'm trying.
The tone is closer to a Hammer horror movie than a Marvel superhero movie, which I think it's neat. This had also been pitched as a TV series, but found itself limited to just this one made-for-TV effort. But if I could, I would like to offer one other, less orthodox option, if I could. Have you ever heard of Evil Bong? What about Evil Bong 2? Ginger Dead Man? What about Evil Bong versus Ginger Dead Man? No? Okay. What about the Puppet Master movies? My personal favorites have always been Trancers and Dr. Mordred. These are Full Moon movies, the movie house of filmmaker Charles Band. Well, there was a time when Charles Band was able to work with Jack Kirby on a knockoff Doctor Strange movie called Dr. Mortalis. Jack Kirby did some preliminary work on a one-sheet and some sketches, etc., but then had to bow out. And once the deal fell through, Band did what Band does best and just moved forward anyway and decided to change the title and make a Dr. Mordred movie.
Can't do that!
Yeah, but they did. My favorite line came from the video aisle on page 54, where it says, as for Dr. Mortalis, the idea of Band making a ripoff of a high-profile license and then ripping off the ripoff after the deal dissolves, that sounds like the Charlie we all know and love. Now, our two main draws here have to be Jeffrey Combs, the Reanimator, and Wei Yun from Deep Space Nine and a number of other projects, and also Brian Thompson, whose face I think is more recognizable than his name. I really like Dr. Mordred if you're into B-movies. There's just something really special about this, even within the Full Moon catalog, within Marvel movies in general, this weird knockoff that they were able to get away with, and it's fun. And if you are a Jeffrey Combs fan, then it's a must. You've already seen it. If you haven't seen it and you think you're a Jeffrey Combs fan, you've just outed yourself as not a fan. Not a fan at all. Now, I won't lie and say that this is a great Fantastic Four movie, but it is in the top 4. Huh? A little Fantastic Four joke? No? I mean, I won't lie. That joke wasn't going to work pretty soon. Probably by the time this comes out, there'll already be another Fantastic Four movie in Marvel's slate, and then there'll be 5, and then this one just wouldn't make any sense. No sense at all. So forget that joke. Honestly, forget the entire movie. I mean, it was never released. There is a bootleg out if you want to try and track that down. But what is truly worth watching is Doomed, The Untold Story. This is a documentary that's just heartbreaking and fascinating. It's a look at how the movie was never released and why, but it's a case where the story of the movie not coming out is probably more interesting than the movie itself. So we don't really have a Fantastic Four. This would have been it, but we do get this documentary. Now, in the 90s, there was a pair of made-for-TV efforts trying to crack the live-action Marvel code. The first is Generation X in 1996. And unlike the X-Men, this title might need a little bit more explanation for viewers who aren't really that familiar with comics. Okay, it's still the X-Men, but it's in the 90s. That's pretty much it. I mean, the characters are all a little bit more idiosyncratic with weird powers, stretchy skin, or not like Mr. Fantastic where you can stretch your whole arm. Just the skin, the bones aren't stretching, I think, if that's right. Another guy, Chamber, had a power where he could sort of like Cyclops' eyes, but rather than blasting off his eyelids, right, that didn't work. This guy, it comes out of his mouth and he just blasted his whole jaw off, and now he's just got this big open thing with power emanating from it, which makes it tough to go to the mall without being stared at. Oh, and instead of Professor X, these kids get Emma Frost and Sean Cassidy the Banshee as teachers, which is pretty wild given when you want to think of it. This is still the first live-action X-Men movie ever there was, with no Xavier. It's a ballsy move. For comics fans, you should know that iconic comics artist Chris Bachalo created the book. Newer readers might know him from his Marvel work over the last decade, helming his own Doctor Strange title, as well as Wolverine and the X-Men. My personal favorite Bachalo work was on Grant Morrison's New X-Men towards the end of the run, specifically this scene where Wolverine uses the restroom in the Hellfire Club and runs into Sabretooth standing next to each other at the urinals. It's a classic unsung comic book moment. Now, the TV movie doesn't have the entire cast from the book due to budget constraints, and it's a little bit more juvenile than audiences wanted, probably. We get your standard wacky and zany Matt Frewer, who I kind of think sets the tone for the wackadoo, over-the-top comic book villainy tone for the whole thing.
It's okay, Bob. I completely understand. I'll start from the beginning, okay? Real slow.
The rest of the production isn't too far from that tone, but still, it's fun to see Emma Frost and Sean Cassidy. And we get to see his power, which is not too bad for made-for-TV. But I think for most 90s kids who grew up watching the Fox X-Men animated series, Jubilee, seeing her in live action, might have been the most exciting to see in this show. But in the end, this production is just really a product of the time that it was made.
Can I help you?
Officers Hootie and Blowfish with the Bureau of Mutant Affairs.
I don't think it was very well received when it came out. I mean, I can't remember anyone saying anything at the time. I didn't get to see it on TV, and obviously it wasn't picked up for a series.
That's all right, Kurt. The ignorant are always skeptical when they're given knowledge.
But one other fun fact, the Xavier Institute that was used for filming in this production is actually the same one that's used for X-Men 2, X-Men 3, Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, and both Deadpools, which just also happens to be in Canada, in BC, on Vancouver Island in Victoria, at the historic Hatley Castle. Also, Chris Bichello, the creator of Generation X, is also Canadian, born in Manitoba. There was also a second production from Fox, Nick Fury, in 1998. Now, can we all stop for a second and just thank the maker for a David Hasselhoff Nick Fury? I mean, sure, it's another failed pilot, but it's got Baron von Strucker, Arnim Zola, Hydra, and S.H.I.E.L.D., and helicarriers. It's got live model decoys. It's got a full cast featuring Lisa Rinna and Gary Chalk. I really enjoy this movie. You know when you see a parody of a movie in a movie, like in Scream 2, where they show scenes from Stab, which is based on the events of Scream, or when you see trailers like in Grindhouse and you wish you got a full movie like we did with Machete? Hoff's Nick Fury is best enjoyed like this amazing gift, like a parody that nobody knew was a parody. I think if you think of it that way when you're watching it, it just becomes much more enjoyable. And it's pretty cute too. I think I can sum up the entire production best in one image. No, it's not the introduction to Hoff's Fury, which is inexplicably in an old mine shaft digging with a pick for some reason at rocks because he's retired, supposedly, and I guess that's what old spies do. They go up into the Rockies and go into a mine and just chip away at rocks? Okay, so it's not that. It isn't the Hoff talking to his own live model decoy.
Not a bad-looking guy, huh? Not a bad-looking guy, huh?
Or the daughter of von Strucker, who just creams her jeans every time she gets a chance to be evil or she's in pain.
We are the soldiers of anarchy. And it is time that the world fear us once again. Revenge is mine. I said revenge is mine. Don't you have anything to say?
It's none of those. It's this image here of Nick Fury standing in front of a no smoking sign, smoking. I mean, it's just kind of adorable, right? Like, this is like what a 12-year-old would think the idea of being a badass would look like a Bart Simpson poster or something.
Great. Why aren't we moving?
I kind of think it had everything, and that it's a crime that there wasn't more to follow it. This is like a live-action version of a Saturday morning cartoon Nick Fury in the style of 90s X-Men animated series. I think some people are going to hate me just for saying that, but you know what I say?
I welcome their hatred, end quote.
And it was also written by David Goyer, who wrote Blade and Blade 2 and directed the third. Goyer has many comic book credits and sci-fi credits to his resume as a writer. Oh! And it was filmed in Vancouver, Canada. That's the last time I'm going to say that, because there's only one movie left on our list, and it's not filmed in Vancouver. Okay, now I know this is a bit of a controversial take, but I'm prepared to die on this hill. But the 1989 Dolph Lundgren Punisher was absolutely the best Punisher until Barenthal. Sorry. But, that's just the way it is.
How are you going to convince anyone of this?
Look at the competition. You got Tom Jane, who is a good-looking Hollywood Punisher, but he could just as easily have played Cap in his prime. That's kind of weird that he could play both. I mean, he's so dark and disturbed he plays cutesy eyes with Rebecca Romaine the whole thing, because you're really slumming it, bro. Tough times. And the movie was ridiculous. Instead of punishing, he was manipulating the villain into thinking his wife was cheating on him with his friends, so they kill each other in the end by sneaking around and planting parking tickets. And, seriously? This guy's he's like the Punisher. He's a blunt instrument, not the manipulator. And then we got Warzone, which looked right and smelled right, and then by the end of its own runtime, it ridiculously blows that tone out of the water by being a silly farce as well.
I know all about it. I've been hearing it all my life.
Now in comparison, Lundgren was really dark and seemed really disturbed, all hanging out naked in the sewers, all greased up. Why, God, why are the guilty not punished?
Or have you already answered? Have you already said to the world, here is justice, here is punishment?
He didn't have the big skull on his chest, but he did have the cool skull knives, and he did have a motorcycle in the sewers, and he was all dirty and raw and gritty. The other component that really makes the film work, in my opinion, is having Louis Gossett Jr. as his old partner, still out looking for Frank Castle. He represents the hope and heart in the movie, and as we come into the plot, he's already on life support, being cynical and giving up until he meets his new partner and the events of the movie transpire. And the throwing star earrings are absolutely classic to every 9-year-old that rented it over and over and over again. I mean, it was right.
It's the only way.
So there we have it, a live-action, mostly theatrical Marvel Cinematic Universe with a Hulk, a Thor, Captain America, Daredevil, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Nick Fury, X-Type Mutant People, The Punisher, and complete with a Stan Lee cameo. The only thing I didn't really mention was Howard the Duck.
And proud of it.